And hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to be back with you. Um, I've had a perpetual cold, so please forgive if my voice sounds a little off. I'm feeling well and really happy to be with you today in this full moon of Tevet, this month in our Hebrew calendar that's often actually associated with struggle and challenge and darkness. It's the darkest time of the year. And in our tradition, this month is one of the 3 months that belongs to Esau. So there's the tradition that some of the months belong to Yaakov, to Jacob, and some belong to Esau. And these are our challenging months. So if you have been struggling emotionally or in other ways during this time, that struggle is part of the cycle here. It's part of our thematic cycle. And whatever you've been feeling, there is the wisdom here and the invitation to consider that whatever might be coming up for us, the pleasant, the unpleasant, the challenging, the beautiful, it all has its time, right? It all has its season. It all has its place in our cycle and is important in some way. Like Ecclesiastes teaches in Kohelet, right? Everything has an appointed season. There's a time for every matter under heaven. So that includes the more challenging moments as well. And in the most essential way, and what I really dearly love about this practice of mindfulness, is that essentially it is being with what is true. We are practicing simply being with what is true. And we often encounter resistance when we really settle in and relax to open to meet the moment. We often encounter resistance, especially when there are more challenging experiences present for us. In a recent meditation, I realized that all of my resistance to simply pausing and being and opening to the present moment had to do in some way with a resistance to feeling my vulnerability to emotions or physical sensations that are challenging. But there can be such a profound healing and liberation that doesn't happen overnight, but it's like we're planting seeds every time we sit, every time we pause to practice and to become present in allowing ourselves to feel what is here, even if it's challenging. You know, they say feeling is healing. Feeling is healing. It might sound trite, but it's true in some way that if we can open to be with what is here, to be with the truth of our experience in a safe way, in a grounded and intentional way, healing is possible, growth is possible, presence, a truer and fuller presence is possible. And so this week's Parsha, Vayechi, and he lived, begins with the story of our forefather Yaakov, Jacob, at his deathbed. And I find it interesting that the name of the Parsha, and he lived, which begins with him at his deathbed, right, is actually similar to an earlier Parsha in which his mother Sarah dies. The name of that Parsha is Chaye Sarah, so Sarah's life. And so there's like a hint here from the Torah that death and life are intertwined. Jacob lived, and before he dies, he's blessing his progeny. He's blessing his children and his grandchildren. So even as he is dying, there's a way in which his blessings will live in us, right? That Jacob in some way will live in each of us. And one of the most striking parts of Jacob's story that is meaningful to me, especially in the realm of dealing with challenging emotions, is the story of his name change. So earlier on, he wrestles with an angel on the banks of Jabbok, and he receives this new name, Israel. And that was a moment that represented a spiritual transformation. It was a breakthrough in his growth, in his actualization. The angel says to him, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with beings divine and human, and you have prevailed." However, we notice that from that point through the rest of the Torah, Jacob is not only called Israel. Actually, the Torah switches often between calling him Jacob in some moments and Israel in others. And even here on his deathbed, he is called by both names in this very parsha. He is called both Jacob and Israel. And I think this speaks to something that is so true and so important about how we grow, how we heal, and how we awaken in our spiritual practice. We often think it is or want it to be a linear process, right? Like I had this breakthrough or I realized this important thing I've actualized in some way, and now I am Israel. I'm my higher self. I'm prepared to meet life from that consciousness. But that's not actually how it goes, right? It's not really like that. It's much more a cyclical journey with ebbs and flows of forgetting and remembering and forgetting and remembering again. And there's moments when we are truly acting and moving from that place of maturity, from that Israel, from our actualized selves. And there's moments when our younger selves, when that inner Jacob is at the wheel and is acting and moving. And in a sense, that younger self, that inner Jacob, never goes away, right? We never heal it away. But there's a way in which our practice can help us learn to love those parts better, to love them more skillfully and well, and to include them in ways that are healthy, in ways that are appropriate. And this is really how our journey towards growth and healing can happen. The Matovu prayer from our Shacharit service, from our morning service, I think illustrates this concept quite beautifully. It says, Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, how good are your tents, Yaakov, Jacob. Mishkanotecha Yisrael, your dwelling places, Israel. So it's saying how good, meaning like, this is what's true. This is how it is. Are your tents, Yaakov, and your dwelling places, Israel. So both Yaakov and Israel are included here. And it's quite beautiful, this idea that perhaps the tent, the house, the place of living, that everyday place is the place of Jacob, and the Mishkan, the sanctuary that is fitting for that indwelling presence of holiness, that in this prayer is associated with Israel. So they both have their place. And so my invitation today, as we drop into our practice together, is can we trust that everything has its time? That there's a time in our cycle, a moment for our more challenging emotions, as well as the beautiful and pleasant ones. That there is a time for our inner Jacob, for those younger parts of ourselves to be included, to be present, to be loved and welcomed. And a time for Israel, for our more actualized, mature, awakened selves to be felt. On Jacob's deathbed, he asks his sons to treat him with chesed and emet. Chesed and emet. In the translation I was reading, it's translated as faithful, loving kindness, those two words, chesed ve'emet. And here at IJS, we often use these words as practice instructions. That chesed and emet are qualities to bring to our mindfulness practice to meet what is arising. So this is how we can meet whatever is coming up, including our inner Jacob, with chesed and emet, with kindness, the kindness and care of chesed, of love, and emet, truthful, clear, and honest seeing. So with care and with truth, we will come into our practice today. And so I invite you to settle in to a posture that is supportive of mindful presence. Relaxing in the body. And inviting as well a sense of wakefulness. Allowing our attention to settle here in this moment. Allowing ourselves to more fully arrive here in the present moment. Allow the attention to gently rest in the breath, in the body, as an anchor, helping us to stay here, grounded here in the present moment. You might notice the mind, thoughts arising. Or the presence of physical sensation or emotion. Just for now, we can simply allow whatever is true, whatever is here to be here. There's nothing to fix or to control. Nothing to resist. Or to grasp onto. Simply being with what is here. With kindness and clarity, chesed and emet. Knowing the truth of our experience as it emerges moment by moment. With honesty. And welcoming it, allowing it. With kindness and care. Chesed and emet. knowing our experience moment by moment, with clarity, through our direct perception, honesty. And with kindness, with care. Thank you so much for your presence, your practice.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that really exquisite teaching and practice to bring us into Shabbat together. And friends, we seal the practice as we do each time by offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in Kaddish, to do so. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, to have the honor of helping to create a minyan of support and comfort and love for those who are. If you're reciting Kaddish and would like to put the name or names of anyone that you're honoring in, you can put them in the chat box now or after we recite Kaddish. And we thank Caddis Bazito, who as always is holding our space here gracefully and with skill to share the words of the Kaddish on the screen. And I invite those who are reciting the Kaddish to join me by rising, whether in body or in spirit. And you can unmute at this time as we recite the words together. Yitgadal.
Yitgal v'yishadash shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Rabba Tirte
Agala.
Amen.
Yehishme Rabba Mara.
Amen.
Bara
Ar.
Jar
Ar.
Left
Amen. Shalal. Brifu.
Call
Amen.
Lama Rabba Mincha. Aleinu Yisrael. Shalom Bimamam.
Shalom. Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael. Kol yoshpei tevru.
Amen.
Amen.
And friends, thank you so much, as always, for joining us today. If you're leaving us now, I want to wish you a sweet and restorative Shabbat. And we hope to see you next week. We'll be back with a full week of practice next week on Monday with yoga at 11 and Eastern Time and meditation at 12:30 Eastern Time. As usual, we want to thank Sherry Weinberger for sponsoring our practice today in loving memory of her dad, Arthur Bloom. Thank you so much, Sherry, and may his memory be a blessing for you. And of course, as always, we're grateful to Kat Esposito, who behind the scenes holds our space so that we can gather in this way. And again, if you're leaving now, I wish you Shabbat Shalom. You're all invited, of course, as always, to stay on for a conversation with our teacher today, Rebecca Schisler, about this beautiful teaching and practice, or just to share reflections, or if you'd like, you can use this time and space as a container for your own continued practice. If you'd like to continue sitting with us, of course, we welcome you to do that as well. And I'm going to invite Rebecca in here. If you have a question, please put it in the chat box and preface it with question in all caps if possible. That was really wonderful, Rebecca. Thank you so much. So I haven't done this in a while, but I do like to kind of reiterate. It was such a rich teaching. Just to reiterate it a little bit briefly, and sometimes I like to do that by telling you what I heard. Okay, you tell me if I got it right. You can add or correct me. That we have this conclusion of the Yaakov narrative this week, and this juxtaposition of the two names of Yaakov, which represents that struggling character, wounded character, and Israel represents maybe the more awakened, more enlightened. I was thinking about it actually as kind of Yaakov representing, the ways in which we kind of see the world in a very dualistic, fractured way, and the Israel being the lens which kind of sees through that or underneath that to the wholeness, right? Sees the oneness. Another way, maybe just another way of saying something similar. And that blessing that he asks to be treated with chesed, the emet at the end. And I just wanted to throw in that the act of burial, right, of treating the met, the body of the deceased is considered an act of chesed ve'emet, right, of that kind of quality. Means to treat, meet our Yaakov with that kindness and truthfulness, not to deny it, repress it, or avoid it.
Yeah.
So that's what I got as kind of the upshot of the teaching and the practice. How'd I do?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Okay. But then you threw in, for good measure, got a bonus of Matovu, right? Of the tent of the Ohel of our, I don't know. How were you presenting the Ohel, the tent?
Yeah. So I would say maybe one thing I would add that for me is always present when working with the Hebrew calendar and where we are in the cycle, which I always am in my spiritual practice, is
Mhm.
that also everything has its time. So there's a time for Yaakov to be present. There's a time for Israel to be present. There's a time for all of our emotions to be felt. And it's also highly interpretable, right? So I loved what you were just saying about Yaakov being the more dualistic, maybe part that sees things in a more dualistic way or more wounded, and Israel can see the bigger picture. I love that. I think for me, what was resonating today from the interpretation was more like inner child, like Yaakov as the inner
Yeah.
child,
Mhm.
and Israel as the adult, grown up, more aware, more conscious
Mhm.
self.
Mhm.
So that's one way that it's useful for me. And then the Matovu, when I read that, what I loved about Ohel and Mishkan is just considering like, oh, okay, that this is another interpretive way to consider. Maybe Ohel, the tent, that's like the mundane, everyday dwelling place. Maybe that's the place of Yaakov, our everyday lives, doing the dishes and the laundry, ups and downs,
Mhm.
difficulties in our relationships with ourselves and others, paying the bills, being messy, cleaning up, that's Yaakov. And then also Mishkanotecha Yisrael, the dwelling place, the Mishkan, the sanctuary. That's also true. And that's also part of our lives, but something that we maybe have to carve out space for in more intentional ways, right? If we're really going to access Israel consciousness, the consciousness of our higher selves, to feel the divine, sometimes it's something that graces us totally. And often we need to really make space for it and practice and you know, clean up the dirty laundry, dirty dishes, make it a place that's suitable for that indwelling presence to really be felt.
Yeah. It's really beautiful. So I might have a question. I don't see questions, a lot of appreciation. Oh, here's one. Well, Susan, our grief over our brothers. Trying to, okay. Well, this relates. Here's the question. I don't know if it will subsume Susan's question here, but I guess it can go either way. When we are really like stuck in Yaakov mode, in that wounded or that inner child mode, and can't access the wise adult mode, of Yisrael, I guess. Or the other way around, when maybe others are, seem stuck in that mode, but and where we may think of ourselves, at least in that, in the more enlightened, aware mode. What's your suggestion there about how we practice with that? But I mean, maybe there's probably two separate questions. When we're, like, and I think we could all probably relate to this, is then we're just like, we're just stuck, and we may wish we weren't in that place, but we're, for lack of a better word right now, just triggered in a way that child is really driving the bus, right?
Yeah.
Let's start there. What's your advice there? So like, I know I should be Yisrael, but I'm Yaakov.
Yeah. I think that the metaphor of the inner child is really so useful because we know how to relate to children, right? If a child is acting out, having a temper tantrum, crying, we don't want to like banish them and shame them and make them feel bad.
We don't
We
want
want
to, but we might.
but we don't do that. We want to hold them with love and care and let them know that it's going to be okay. We also need to have a boundary, right? That's part of like parenting well or caring for children well. And that's part of what actually makes the child feel safe. So the way I might think of it is like when I feel one of my inner child parts really acting out, can I access in that moment the part of me that is more adult and grown up?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll even imagine a dialogue happening internally with that, whatever, 6-year-old Rebecca. And, I can even say to her, like, hey, you're not going to drive the car. I'm going to drive the car because you're a child and I'm an adult and that's not safe. for you to drive the car, but you can sit in the car. You can sit in the front seat. You can even maybe choose the music, so I think that's the question, like what kind of chesed, what kind of love and allowing and welcoming is appropriate and safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the framing of chesed and emet, because these are twin qualities that really balance each other. So if it's all chesed, all welcoming, acceptance, loving kindness, that might not be safe. There might not be enough boundary to really ground what's happening in truth, to really allow the goodness of that loving kindness to come through. But if it's all emet, all just honest clarity, discerning boundary without any love, that's going to be unbalanced also, because these parts of ourselves or others that are hurt and wounded, they don't go away. Right? So I think for me, on my journey, my spiritual journey and my healing journey, understanding that the goal is not to like make my child parts go away or that they should just grow up, but it's actually to learn how to love them really well, to give them what they need, to accept them, and to help them, find the right place at the table, find the right seat in the car. So
yeah. Okay, so there are two questions. One really, I think a really good question from Ricky about, it's interesting that Yisrael, representing that kind of adult, right, awakened, more enlightened, a more aware state, is the word itself means struggle, right? Or it's understood to mean struggle. So how to like fit that into this framework that you're offering. And then there are a lot of questions about where you're teaching. Mostly, of course, Rebecca teaches through IJS, though maybe you want to do a little, for people in the Bay Area, maybe you want to do a little plug for your day-long retreat later this month.
Yeah, happy to. So I'll start with the question about Yisrael, name meaning struggle. I love that. I recently had a thought of just profound appreciation for the path of mindfulness, and especially all that I've learned from the Buddhist tradition, from the Dharma, about the causes of suffering and the path towards the end of suffering. And I just had this moment of profound appreciation for a spiritual path that is so focused on dealing with suffering. Because the truth of our human experience is that life is often challenging. We all, no matter what our life circumstances are, we get sick, we die, we lose people we love. We are all on this planet Earth, as someone said also, which is just quaking with suffering and brokenness. And to me, there's something that feels very adult and very whole, actually, about acknowledging the struggle that it is to be a human being on this planet at this time throughout history, and the wrestling of how to be in relationship with the truth of that in a way that is conscious and loving and wise. One other thing I'll just add, though, that I love about Yisrael, so I think that's the translation God wrestler that's most commonly known, but you could also kind of translate it as Yashar El, which means straight to God. So that has another quality. What does it mean to be on a path that is straight to God? And that's just something to play with also. So, and then it's the question of where do I teach? Yeah, I'm a full-time faculty member at IJS, so blessed for that. So I teach with IJS. If you're on the newsletter and receiving information from IJS, that's a great way to stay connected with me and my teaching. And then if folks are in the Bay Area where I live, I also do events and teachings here that are in person. We have a day-long retreat coming up at the end of January at a renewal synagogue here in Berkeley. So IJS will be sharing that through their Facebook and Instagram. And you can also find me on Instagram, Becky Schisler, is my name. So yeah. It looks like you're muted.
Oops, sorry. All right. So I was going to say, it sounds like this is a good place to bring things in for a landing, and wish everyone and wish you a Shabbat Shalom, Rebecca, and also healing to finish up and clean up the cold. And hope the weekend gives you And everyone who's out west, of course, respite from dangerous weather conditions, and wishing everybody a sweet and restorative Shabbat. We'll be back next week. Thanks again to Kat and to Sherry for sponsoring our practice today, and also to each and every one of you. We'll look forward to seeing you on the other side of Shabbat. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Many blessings.